The Spencer Mansion incident is one of the most iconic events in Resident Evil history, of course being the main plot of the first Resident Evil game and its 2002 remake. The game we're looking at today though is a reinterpretation and an abridged retelling of the events of Resident Evil, but for mobile phones with Resident Evil Genesis, not to be confused with the novelisation of the 2002 film. This game is based off the 2002 remake and does have its own unique take on its retelling, mainly being its presentation as a more puzzle-orientated adventure game. In Resident Evil Genesis, you play as Special Tactics and Rescue Service, or STARS for short, member Jill Valentine of the STARS Alpha Team. Alpha Team has been called to the Arklay Mountains outside Raccoon City to investigate and find out what happened to Bravo Team who had been sent in earlier but lost contact with. Alpha Team discovers Bravo Team's helicopter wreckage and are attacked whilst investigating it. The survivors of the attack rushed into the nearby mansion to take shelter and continue their investigation. While STARS Alpha Team Captain Albert Wesker secures the lobby, he asks Jill and STARS member Barry Burton to check out the other rooms. Jill finds and takes out a zombie in the next room, which catches Barry's attention. After deciding to report this to Wesker, Jill goes back to the lobby to find him missing, and the investigation of the mansion begins. The game will have you as Jill going around the mansion collecting items and solving puzzles to advance the plot while taking out enemies along the way. But is this game any good? Find out in The Good. I really do like the puzzles this game has to offer. They differ from the ones found in the original Resident Evil as well as its remake, and do require some thought in order to solve. One of the puzzles revolved around collecting and rearranging different gemstones. Another involved repairing a biometric scanner, and breaking open a couple of doors. Regardless, they do involve Jill having to explore and find a bunch of items that can help her with this. With no inventory limit, you don't have to worry so much about inventory management, and the game does do away with needing typewriters and ink ribbons in favour of allowing you to save anywhere. The puzzles do have clues which can be found in notes and books. While there are some pretty tense moments of action throughout the game, I do appreciate the added focus on puzzle solving, which is certainly an improvement from Confidential Report. Despite the combat system, which I'll talk about later, I think in terms of difficulty the game was pretty fair. I had my fair share of deaths throughout the game, and overcoming them through trial and error was part of the charm. I had to ditch the mentality of saving as little as possible with the game, as I found myself saving often before key areas, or at least shortly before. The game is somewhat faithful to the remake, with enemies such as regular zombies, crimson heads and hunters to deal with. The game also features an appearance from Lisa Trevor, who will initially chase you early in the game. The game's music does use tracks from Resident Evil, which I thought was a nice touch. It's not the exact same tracks used in the same spots in the original game or remake, but still fitting nonetheless given the circumstances. That's all I have for the good, so let's move on to what didn't work so well in The Bad. Let's address the elephant in the room here. While this game features characters such as Jill, Barry and Wesker, where is Chris Redfield? He's only the other character you could play as in Resident Evil and its remake, and even in Jill's scenario, Chris is still featured in it. This game doesn't even mention him once. Did he not join STARS in this retelling? Did he not make it to the mansion? Most of Bravo Team is absent too, given that Jill, or Chris if you'd picked him, initially finds Kenneth J. Sullivan from Bravo Team being eaten by a zombie as the iconic revelation that zombies infested the mansion. The only member from Bravo Team you'll find is Enrico Marini, their leader, and he plays the same role as he does in the original game and remake. Getting to him is optional, and it's an absolute nightmare to do so given the amount of enemies standing in the way between you and him. The other missing boss of the game is the giant snake Yawn. Other than that, the game does feature a majority of the enemies from the original and remake. A lot of the more obvious story beats of Resident Evil, if you're familiar with its plots, are hinted at very early, and you're basically all but outright told what's going on before the respective scenes happen. The game's combat is probably the biggest critique with the game. The game does give you a number of weapons to choose from as you explore, and I don't think I've ever needed to use any of the other weapons except in a boss fight because I had to, and late in the game. The game's aiming system is a little awkward too. You press a button to use your weapon and a crosshair appears. You then move that crosshair over an enemy while they're still moving towards you, and press the button again to make a gauge appear. Hit the sweet spot on the gauge and you deal damage to the enemy. For regular zombies, crimson heads and Cerberus, zombie dog enemies, A single hit in the sweet spot from your pistol is all you need to take one out. If an enemy runs up to you, it will attack you dealing damage, or in the Cerberus's case, kill you. When not aiming your weapon, you can run, and if you ever feel unprepared, you can leave the room, formulate a strategy and try again. I know the games are trying to simulate how their console/PC counterparts did things, but it's a lot more awkward doing this on a numerical pad, and I'm sure even with a mobile phone number pad it would have been a bit of a challenge too. In saying that, as I said earlier in the good, there is a sense of tension, especially when you enter a room with multiple enemies in it. Then you have the area leading to Enrico, which is an absolute nightmare to get through. While the game does encourage exploring and checking things, I feel that a lot of it is to pad the game out to make it longer. It also doesn't help that you are moving at the speed of a crawl, as the only time Jill will run is if she is in a room or area with an enemy. The books, which can hold clues to a couple of puzzles, are among the bookshelves in the library, and if you didn't know where to check, you would have to go through every bookshelf to find them. Medkits replace the herbs and first aid sprays in this game, and those are found by inspecting the things in the rooms you're in. Items for some of the puzzles have to be found this way too, and there's even an item that's not even used for a puzzle or at all. Sometimes you do have to check couches, tables and plants in a room just to see if they hold anything, and there are a lot of those to pad out the length of the game. What I do appreciate is how there's dialogue about wanting to use certain items on things, which I think is refreshing over the more boring "I cannot do that." The game is also a bit vague about things. For example, when Jill was being chased by Lisa earlier in the game, it didn't make any effort to tell you where to go, and Lisa, while moving at a slower pace, will still chase you from one room to another, and may even try to flank you. The room you're supposed to go to is a dead end, so I was initially trying to avoid those rooms unless I really had to go there. I think I've gone on long enough about what I didn't like, so I think it's about time for the opinion. Despite everything I've covered in the bad, Resident Evil Genesis isn't really a bad game as such. Sure, the game doesn't make any mention of Chris Redfield or his involvement in the mansion incident, but I feel the game does make the attempt to replicate the classic Resident Evil experience onto a mobile device, which I think is very admirable. The difficulty I found was fair, and there was some quality of life changes for being on mobile, such as no inventory management and being able to save anywhere, which is nice. The game does feature most of the enemies from the Resident Evil remake in some capacity, and the game does use music from the original to good effect. As a reinterpretation, I think the game's done a fair job, and if you're interested in Resident Evil games and just want to see what's out there, wouldn't hurt to try this. The game's about a couple of hours long. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give Resident Evil Genesis the Neptune sprite out of 10. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.